Welcome back. 2 weeks to go.
Yeah, it's
Just
almost to
2
the
weeks
end.
to go.
We're going to miss it so much,
That's
too.
right. And this week we've got a guest that was going to bring down the grumpiness tremendously. And introduce yourself, Tara.
So I'm Representative Tara Peters from District 122, home of great wine and great engineers from MS&T, of which we have a alum here.
Yes, and my next door neighbor, district-wise.
Yeah, and I thought Don would be the one that would be the reason why it's great wine, because he whines all the time.
But you're one of my favorites too, especially with the chickens.
But I'm expecting cheese with that wine. Yeah. Okay. All
Well,
right.
we got a very important announcement to make this week.
Yes, we do.
That
We received a very prestigious award,
the Hanaway Award.
the Hanaway Award.
This is presented to Jim Murphy and Don Mayhew for the best podcast out of the House of Representatives.
Congratulations.
Look at that. I mean,
Yes.
this is a first class
Okay.
paper.
Much sought after. I mean, people go after this rather than an Emmy.
Well,
And
it's
they-
at least as valuable.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Well, thank you
So
very
what
much.
do you think that made your show get an award for the best podcast?
Our guests, obviously.
Oh, it's the guest.
It's always
Okay.
the
All right.
guest. Yeah, it's
I thought
always
maybe it was the
guest.
talent,
Well,
the content.
we're probably the two
Some of
best
that.
looking guys in the house too.
And probably because we just say it like it is, and we don't jump up and down.
Oh, no 6 foot more.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is
I
that
don't have
not
any
allowed?
6 foot and
Yeah.
more.
And,
6
we
foot
don't
4
echo
more
when we
jokes.
talk. You know. like
Okay,
they do.
perfect. All right, that's fair. Well,
all right.
so, congratulations.
What'd
So,
you do?
What'd
Go
you
ahead.
do this week?
Yeah.
What I do this week?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get some bills passed.
And what are those bills?
So I have House Bill 943, which is an omnibus health bill that has all
Yeah.
kinds of great stuff in it.
Yeah.
Half of it is kind of emergency medical services.
Right.
We're going to require some of our EMS districts to provide better services. We're going to offer a community component to it so that we can get to patients before they basically in the field they get to them before they have to go to the hospital. So if you've got like a repeat offender that's continuing to go in the ambulance when it has just things like diabetes or that type of thing, the EMS directors will get to critique that in the field.
Mitigate it. In other words, try to get out ahead of that emergency.
Right, which
phone
would
call.
decrease health
Yeah.
costs for people having to go to the emergency room.
Right.
And then half of the bill is some great healthcare legislation, everything from some prenatal testing so that we can decrease our mother and infant mortality in the state of Missouri.
Yeah.
It has to do with some 12-month expansion of contraception. It has to do with providing some dentistry services in prisons. It has to do with, there's so many things. Do you want to keep going on and on?
No, but it brings a smile to my face because what the public sees us up here is doing is all the fire breathing, controversial stuff. But isn't this really what we do?
Yes.
Isn't this what we're here for? Is taking care of all those things that really help our citizens, and that's why I love this podcast, because we get to talk about things that really matter. I mean, not that those abortion things and guns things don't have some consequence, but the day-to-day lives of our citizens are really going to be affected by this bill.
Right.
Where's it at?
Directly affects the people directly.
Yeah.
Right? It's a thing that you can touch and feel at a direct result from legislation that every community is going to be able to feel the effects of it as soon as it gets signed into law. So where's it at?
So we've got it out over here. It passed well on the House floor. It is sitting in the Children's Senior Health Committee over in the Senate. It was supposed to be execed out last week. There's a couple little tweaks that we're trying to fix in order to get that passed through that committee.
Is that Jill Carter's?
It's in in
Okay.
Senator Carter's. Yes, sir.
Is that have you found a place to amend it on to any bills?
Yeah, so I think the version of that is on several things, and don't ask me numbers because there's as you know, the last 2 weeks.
Senate Bill 7.
It's on Senate Bill 7. It's also being hopefully Senator Patty Lewis has got a bill that is number 50, 74.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm bad at numbers.
That's fine.
There's
Is
too
it
many of them
open?
going through my head right now. But that version
It's
is
over
on
there?
several things,
Okay.
trying to get moved across the
All
finish line. Senator Black has got the 943 version
Right.
over in the Senate, and so it's hopefully once it gets passed out of that committee, it'll be somewhere in line.
Which is interesting, because this is that time of year
Right.
where all of the good work we did is now in the hands of the Senate, and frankly in reverse, all the good work that the Senate has done is now in our hands, and there's some trading going on.
Well, and some not so
Just a
good
little
work
bit.
too.
A little bit of trading. I've spent more time talking to senators this week than I have all year,
Yeah.
and productively.
Yes.
You know, say, hey, a lot of times in the past, I would say when we had Senator Eigel and that group, it was always let's go to war over everything. This year, I think it's been a totally different thing where it's more like a peace negotiation. I've got this and you've got that. What can we do so we can both get what we want? And I think we've done that much more successfully this year than we ever have, in at least the last 4 or 5 years.
Luckily, everybody's operating right still,
And everybody's
and so
operating,
yes,
yeah.
so that's a good sign.
And that's the true challenge that we face up here. Often folks ask us, well, why did you vote for such and such? Well, it's probably because we liked the underlying bill, but perhaps didn't like the amendment so much. And so you have to put it in the balance to weigh whether or not the thing you don't much care for outweighs the good that you can get out of, let's say, the underlying bill.
Yeah.
So those are the decisions that we face every year, and it's always this time of year where we're looking at those kind of things. And so
that happened to me today on the floor where
Yep.
one of my bills was amended, and I thought watered it down to a point where I wasn't really pleased with it. But my choice was, do I let it go and have something that isn't exactly what I want, but it's better for the citizens than being stubborn and saying, no, we can't do this.
Yeah.
So I stood up and I said, I really don't like what you're doing, but I'm going to accept it because I think in the end it's better than not doing anything.
Correct.
And
Amendment 3 is a good
we
example
have
of
to
that
do
kind
that,
of thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where we passed out of our chamber something that you and I would have preferred something stronger, but we are fairly confident what we sent to the Senate will pass the voters, and
Well,
so
I think
that's
it
where
aligns more to what the voters want.
correct,
And
which
it's
is
what they
means
want
the
that's
same
more
thing.
important
But yeah,
than necessarily what we do. So.
better stated. I will give you that one. My good
Well,
friend.
my gosh, that'd be the number one.
Well, you get one.
I'll write that down on my calendar.
Right?
Yeah.
Please do. Yeah.
I got a bill passed going to the governor this week on peer-to-peer auto rentals, where if I had a car that was sitting idle and I wanted to rent it, and you as the app, I think Toro is one,
Mhm.
would put you together with the gentleman over here that one needs to rent a car, where I could rent my car to him.
Mhm.
But there was some flaws in the system as to on insurance as to who would pay if he got in a wreck.
Yeah.
And this put an umbrella over it that said who was going to pay and made sure that if my insurance wasn't going to cover it and his insurance wasn't going to cover it, that the app who made the deal, they would carry insurance to make sure that the consumers are protected.
Great.
And there was a cybersecurity part on it that will mandate that the insurance companies protect your data
Mhm.
from cyber attacks.
And
So-
believe it or not, people think that kind of stuff is automatic. But corporations aren't bound by any law unless we pass
Unless
a
we
law
pass it.
that tells them that they have to protect that data. So Google and Facebook and all of those are examples of where they regularly sell your data to third-party vendors all the time,
Yeah. So,
and without your consent or knowledge. And so I appreciate you putting that on there, Jim. That's a very important.
going to the
amendment.
governor, let him sign
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah.
something we never know if we're ever going to get any of your stuff through at the end of the year. But occasionally we get a consensus of everybody and we move things through.
So
And
I can rent
sometimes
your
it's-
car next week?
Absolutely.
And sometimes
Yeah.
it's the stuff. I think it'd go the other way. You do have a Lincoln after all. But sometimes that's it. The bill that you don't think was going to go anywhere suddenly gets legs and takes off.
Well,
And-
that was a hard bill to get because you had to get everybody to agree, and that turned out to be a nightmare. But I was pretty pleased.
But that's a good example. Is the reason why I brought that up is that I don't know how you felt about the bill at the beginning of the season, but on those complicated bills for me, it's like, yeah, I'm going to push on this thing as hard as I can, but I know it's going to be a challenge. But that's not the one you predict is going to pass, right?
No. In fact, 3 other members had filed similar bills, and they'd pretty much given up on it.
Right.
And I was the only one that kept working, and we finally got through it. But we included them into it. They're going to get credit for where credit's due.
Yeah.
What else have you got going?
What else I got going? We did pass the one, I had a MIRA bill, so that was to repeal some, if you're a prisoner and your grandmother passes away and leaves you some money, the Attorney General was allowed to take that money from you. He would be able to compensate. It's a pay-to-play type of thing. It's been on the books for a long time. When the crime bill passed, that part of that got put on there. So we have repealed that. So if you are in prison, it's the Missouri Incarceration Reimbursement Act is what MIRA stands for. And so you will be able to keep your money, which I believe if you paid your penance to society, that if you've got a little bit of startup money, that would be the difference between you being able to turn your life around.
Turn your life around.
Absolutely.
Or start out with nothing and
Or
go
start-
on the street.
Yeah.
But the inheritance had nothing to do with the crime they committed.
Right, well, they paid their dues by...
Yeah, they
by
pay
being
their debt to
incarcerated.
society, but more importantly, that money had nothing to do with the crime they committed.
Right.
And so the government really doesn't have a right to that. It was our realization when we found out that the foster care system, for instance, was keeping the Social Security benefits that were going to foster kids for their own uses, not for the child's uses. And so when we passed that bill,
Again,
it was like shock and amazement. We never even
the things
thought.
we do that protect our citizens.
Yeah.
Did we third read one of your bills?
So I have a bill coming back over from the Senate. They passed it out of the Senate. My House Bill 619, and so we will see it next week to TAFP.
Will that come through fiscal?
It'll probably come through fiscal. They added a couple of amendments to it, which will probably require it to come through fiscal.
I may hear it.
Yeah, and
Never
so
know.
there may be an opportunity for one of our better committee chairs to be able to consider the bill next week. I put him in it.
Hint.
Yeah, I put him in the top 20 of all our committee chairs.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Maybe top 25.
You might want to reconsider that number.
It's in the top 25. Number 1 is in the top 25, right?
Well, things are moving along. We passed our budget. The budget went over to the Senate.
Yeah.
They stripped a lot. They added a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to go to
We sent them a $50.5 billion operating budget, and they turned it into a $52.5 billion budget, which is
Which
not
is
the
good.
direction. It's not the direction we want to go with the budget.
Well, for them, that's good.
Perhaps.
Considering
Only adding $2 billion is good.
they only added $2 billion. Normally, it's much more
Oh,
than
okay,
that.
well.
But the
Yeah, better
real
than
problem
years
is
past.
that they cut it out, but they also they added, but they also cut out everything we wanted. So
Right, used it.
there will be a conference.
Use the money for other purposes.
Yeah.
So.
So what you're saying is there's arm wrestling going on right
There's
now?
good,
across
no, well, Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, and we'll get a final budget on the floor on Thursday.
Well, but let's face it, we are way past needing to seriously consider the future budget cycles and where the state of Missouri is going to get money to pay for even the things that we passed today.
Right.
There was some significant GR ask on bills that went out of here today, and we are looking at, if we don't start squeezing down on utilizing this reserve, then there's not going to be any buffer.
Right.
And we'll be back to where we were when you and I first came in, where we were down to $125 million left over on the bottom line, and
Which-
we thought we did great.
Which also included holdbacks because we really needed more than the 125.
And that was only a $29.5 billion budget.
Right.
This thing now, only 7 years later, has swollen to $52.5 billion.
Or 55, depending on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way it is. But next week we will see a final what conference comes up with, and hopefully we'll end up somewhere in the middle where we'll spend our citizens' money as wisely as we can possibly do that.
So what's on the schedule for next week, Tara?
What's on the schedule for next week? Again,
For
try-
you?
Oh, for me to try to move some stuff still forward. And
You've got some stuff still alive
some
then,
stuff
right?
still alive. Nothing.
And do you have anything sitting on the Senate calendar right now?
Nothing on the Senate calendar.
And so there's in theory, right? You're not mathematically eliminated yet on your bills that are sitting in committee over there.
Yeah, and the reality is this time of year, if it's not out of committee probably by Monday of next week, the chances that it's going to go anywhere are
pretty low.
almost
Yeah.
zero.
Absolutely.
So this is the time of year where we take most of our good legislation that we don't see a path for it on a standalone. We're adding it onto Senate bills, and then we have to negotiate with the Senate and vice versa. They're adding stuff on our bills, and we have to negotiate with them. So where we end up is a lot of amendments, and they call them Christmas tree bills, but it's the way we get all of the good work we've done. We put it together with other good work, and we send it out in one bill. People don't like it, but there's just not enough time to pass 50 or 60 or 70 single subject bills,
Right.
because there's not that many hours in the day when you're only here for 4.5 months.
And let's face it, that's not the intent of the words in the Constitution. These are single subject bills.
Yeah.
And in fact, even the Supreme Court, even constituted the way they are, agreed that you're doing titling changes and those kind of things, you do that in committee. And because committees are created for the express purpose of assembling bills. And that may include changing the title, modifying the title in order to combine things of like intent
Right.
onto the same bill. Because as you pointed out, Jim, there's no way that we can send to the floor, pass off the floor 1,800 bills.
But just so to be clear on this, these are bills that have gone through committee. It isn't
Absolutely.
like we don't vet these things.
Right.
It isn't like we just make them up at the last day and say, let's put this on there and put that.
Right.
These are things that we've actually been working on all year, but there's not enough time to get it through the entire process, get it to the floor, get it over to the Senate, get it through their committees, get it, we vetted these bills. They're good bills. They're solid, good law.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard them on the floor, and we've debated them. We know what they are. So now putting them into a package is not such a bad thing as it's portrayed to be.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably name abuses in the past that you and I have seen, but the truth of it is certainly now with the leadership that we've got, we're focusing on doing exactly the intent of what the Supreme Court decision was, which is we're limiting bills to things that are germane to that subject. Now that occasionally does require a titling change where we change the title to include something else.
People don't care.
But I mean that's part of the process. But the point of that is you do that in committee, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and this is the time of year where we help each other out. We see a bill where Tara's stuff can fit on. We say, hey, Tara, you got to put this on there. And, and
I did that 4 times this week already.
Yes. So
have
yes,
too.
I'm trying to throw things on Senate bill vessels to see if we can get it down the
Right.
finish lines.
I've been over in the Senate and made 3 different deals on other people's bills this week to get them moving and get them in a position where they have an opportunity to be passed. Now, whether or not they do, again,
Time will tell.
We're running out of time. We only have 2 weeks and we still have to do the budget. But I think if we actually finish the session, the Senate doesn't close down, we're going to get a lot more done.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, we're a lot farther along than we were last year at this time.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, I think we're about out of time, but thank you
Hey,
for coming.
Thank you
Yeah.
for the invite. I appreciate it.
This is what we do. We kind of just talk about what's going on, and hopefully everybody gets a better flavor for what we do around here.
Absolutely.
So,
what's just one last question for you?
Hmm.
What's one thing people need to come to your district to do?
One thing people need to
Just
come to
one
my
thing.
district to
Yeah.
do.
what time of year?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You get to pick.
Oh,
the
perfect.
time.
Well, then I'm going to do a self plug. In the
Oh.
fall, you should come to Pete's Pumpkin Patch. So my husband and I own an agritourism destination.
I
and so
understand. It's absolutely marvelous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're very proud of our our little pumpkin patch. So,
There you go.
and I've got the governor's been there. Jason Smith has been there. Josh Hawley's been there. So now if we could just get President Trump to come to Pete's Pumpkin Patch, that will
Donald
fulfill my.
has been there.
He has.
Yeah.
In what form?
Donald,
Did I miss
Donald
that?
Mayhew was.
Oh,
there.
Donald
How many
Mayhew.
more Donalds
Donald
do you
Mayhew
need?
has there, and Donald
Yeah,
Mayhew,
chickens?
Jim. But we do have chickens.
Oh, there
yeah.
you go. That's perfect. I'll be there.
Don got the most giant pumpkin. Was it 2 years ago? I think that thing was like this big.
Yeah, it
And I
was.
said, "You have to carry it out." And I'll be darned if he didn't lift that and
I
carry it
did.
out.
It did.
Well, that's done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for
Yeah,
stopping
thank-
by
thank
and
you.
Appreciate
updating
the
us on your
invite.
legislation.
Keep up the good work, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
All right, guys. See you next week.